Good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to be with you this morning. Since I have a student here, I have to be on the best of behavior today. So.
That's right.
If not, we'll tell on you.
Yes, you will.
No, we won't.
Yes, you will. And Mary Ann wanted me to remind you who helped out with the Christmas tree.
I don't know, I just know we need to recognize them.
Well,
Alice was the main
Yes.
Oh,
Wow.
force there.
we want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Is anybody else involved, Alice, or just you?
Alice,
Linda, too.
Linda helped.
Okay. Linda's very humble. So.
It's beautiful day.
Okay. So once again, we are entering into the holiday season. It is a time to reflect on the life of Jesus at a time that is common to celebrate his birth. And a lot of times you will hear people talking about celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ. Today I'm going to kind of differentiate between the words Jesus and Christ in our message. In unity, we recognize the man Jesus as an example for each of us to follow in our daily lives. In unity, we often refer to Jesus as being a way shower, someone that leads the way, someone that we can look to as an example on how we should lead our lives. But in fact, what we are celebrating is the Christ Spirit that was in Jesus, but just as importantly, that same Christ Spirit is in each and every one of us in this room this morning. And a lot of times you will hear it said in the Unity movement that the celebration of Christmas is not only the celebration of the birth of the Christ in Jesus, it is also the celebration of the birth of the Christ Spirit that is within each of us. In our message this morning, as I said, we're going to distinguish the difference between Jesus the man from the Christ. While each of us has an individual name and unique personality characteristics, all of us have the Christ Spirit. And that Christ Spirit indwells us at every moment. We also should recognize that Christ Spirit, as I said, cuts across the world. It cuts across society. Sometimes we choose not to manifest that Christ Spirit, but it exists within each of us. The Christ Spirit is referred to differently in the many spiritual traditions that exist. And even though the term the Christ within, the Christ Spirit is something that is used in metaphysical Christianity, different names sometimes are used for it in different spiritual traditions. And we recognize that, and we honor that. The Christ refers to our best and highest self. Some would call the Christ an enlightened being. In a sense, other spiritual traditions also recognize highly enlightened individuals in their spiritual practices. For example, some may look to the Buddha for inspiration. Some may look to Mohammed. Some may look to people that have attained sainthood in various spiritual and religious traditions, including Mother Teresa, for example. We recognize all of these as having the Christ Spirit existing within them. Today we are going to spend some time talking about Jesus the man and Jesus the Christ. And I think it's important to keep in mind, and there's a number of us in this room. So when we're talking about Jesus the Christ, we could as easily say Mary Ann the Christ, or Sebastian the Christ, or Rachel the Christ, or Donna the Christ. We can actually use that terminology for ourselves. Our society has a tendency not to do that. Maybe some in society might find that sacrilegious, but as I've indicated, within us there is a higher self, a self that only can produce good, a side of ourselves that only can produce love. Our message this morning will also discuss some of the challenges that Jesus the man faced. And these are similar to some of the challenges we ourselves face in our life as well. Afterwards, then, we will spend some time discussing the Christ Spirit that exists within not only ourselves, but within Jesus, who we celebrate at this time of the year. Being the Christ was not unique to Jesus. And as I just indicated a few moments ago, there is a Christ that exists within each and every one of us. We have the capacity to do great things as the Christ. This Christmas season, we not only, as I say, celebrate the birth of Jesus, but the birth of the Christ within each of us. So, let's take a look at the man Jesus first. Most of us need a role model that has gone through similar experiences that we have faced. Actually, probably we may not be able to relate to someone that did not experience something that we did. Oftentimes you will hear it heard when referring to a saint or referring to someone that's considered enlightened in the world, that, oh, they're different. They were able to handle that situation differently because of who they are. And what I'm suggesting to you, that we all have that capacity in an enlightened way to handle any challenge that we may face in our lives. And the reason that we can relate to Jesus, the man, and Jesus, the Christ, is because actually he faced many of the same difficulties and challenges that we do as well. Actually, there's a good likelihood that if he had not, that we would probably not be able to resonate with his teachings and with the things that he said during the course of his earthly ministry. And that's important to keep in mind as we go into the heart of the message this morning, is that Jesus lived here on this earth as a man and experienced things that are common to each and every one of us. And the Bible actually indicates that that is important too, to being able to use someone as a role model. I'm going to share with you Hebrews chapter 2 and verse 18. For because he himself has suffered and been tempted, he is able to help those who are tempted. Think about it. Could somebody inspire us or be a role model for us if they themselves did not experience suffering, temptation, and some of the things in life that are not as pleasant? Let's talk a little bit about the human qualities of Jesus. One could actually go through an entire message just dealing with those qualities. Some, though, have been raised to believe that Jesus is a perfect man, never dealt with emotions like anger, sadness, or fear. In this message this morning, we are actually going to be talking about how Jesus experienced some of those emotions. In reality, Jesus was very human and experienced the full range of feelings and emotions that all humans have at one time or another. It is instructive for us to look at times when Jesus expressed these very, very human emotions. I think it is safe to say that all of us have experienced anger at one time or another. Does anybody here have perfect control over your emotions and never been angry?
Absolutely.
Who?
Who, me?
Oh, you have. So we do have one perfect person.
She lies.
Oh, your nose is getting long.
Jesus the man was no different from any of us. And a good example of Jesus expressing anger is in the gospel account of the money changers in the temple. And probably some of us remember that. But it's probably good to remind us by looking at it and reading from Mark chapter 11 and verses 15 through 18. And they came to Jerusalem, and he entered the temple and began to drive out those who sold and those who bought in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. And he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. And he taught and said to them, "Is it not written, 'My house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations'? But you have made it a den of robbers." And the chief priests and the scribes heard it and sought a way to destroy him, for they feared him, because all the multitude was astonished at his teaching. And when evening came, they went out of the city. In and of itself, anger is not necessarily an inappropriate emotion. I think a lot of us would agree that in those circumstances, Jesus expressed anger. Actually, probably if you were at a store during the Christmas season and you were impatient about being waited on. The other day I was in line like for 45 minutes. And you started turning things over, you'd probably get arrested. So I think it's good to see that Jesus himself, in that instance, expressed anger. Anger is not, like I said, not necessarily wrong. Sometimes anger within ourselves is a good indication that something needs to change. And it's sort of like a weather barometer. You know, when we see the barometer going in a certain direction, we know that stormy weather may be coming. So when we have this strong emotion of anger, we know that something needs to be done. But the question is rightly asked that how do we express anger in an inappropriate way? Most psychologists and mental health professionals will tell you that anger can be healthy if it is channeled into worthwhile activities. By the same token, if anger is expressed in an uncontrolled manner, it may get us into trouble with our family, friends, employer, and even the community in which we may live. Jesus channeled his anger into developing a ministry of love that reminded us of the great power that exists within each of us. And I think if you put or define Jesus' ministry in one way, you could basically define it and spell it in that one four-letter word, L-O-V-E, love. But the humanness of Jesus was also demonstrated by his anger in overturning the tables of the money changers. Some people may not like to hear it, but you could actually say that Jesus lost his temper. Jesus became angry in this particular situation. Another example of a very human quality Jesus expressed is the story of his resurrection of his dear friend Lazarus. And while we're not going to turn to a verse to take a look at that in particular, we're going to go over some of the essential things that occurred in that experience. The Gospel account of John describes the deep emotions Jesus experienced when hearing of the death of Lazarus. John's written account describes Jesus as being troubled in spirit. The account also states Jesus wept for his deceased friend. So think about it. All of us probably at one time in our life have experienced some type of grief due to the loss or transition of a loved one, to possibly not being to do as much as we used to do, possibly losing a job. Those are all the things that at times would create sadness within us. That is normal. Again, it is something that Jesus experienced as well. Sadness is part of the yin and yang of life. Actually, without experiencing sadness, we probably would not appreciate happiness as much too. I think when we discuss enlightened beings, whether it be Jesus or Buddha or Mother Teresa or some of the other saints from the different spiritual traditions, that we might think they were happy all the time. In reality, that is not the case. And even though we're talking about sadness here, and I've shared this in previous messages, prior to her passing, Mother Teresa also had some doubts too. There were a series of letters that came out that she wrote that indicate that she really had some doubts in faith at different times during her life. These are all human qualities, and we should not expect even someone that we view as an enlightened being not also having these emotions and feelings as well. Shedding tears, actually, when we are sad, will help us to cleanse ourselves of negative and toxic emotions. A lot of people would actually say that crying is a way of actually cleansing some of these things out of our lives. It's good not to hold this stuff back. In this sense, Jesus the man, again, was fully human. Finally, as Jesus' crucifixion and death approached, he expressed and manifested intense fear as he prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane. And I'm going to read that account because the intensity of his fear really becomes apparent when we look into the details of how fearful he actually was. I'm going to read from the Gospel account of Luke, chapter 22, in verses 41 through 44. And he withdrew from them about a stone's throw and knelt down and prayed, Father, if thou art willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. And there appeared to him an angel from heaven, strengthening him. And being in an agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down upon the ground. So, a few hours before Jesus' arrest and ultimately his crucifixion and death, he prayed that he did not have to go through that agony. But it's interesting. It talks about him sweating like drops of blood. Actually, at some time, some people probably doubted the accuracy of that account, but there's actually a medical condition where if you experience intense fear, that you have the ability to sweat drops of blood. This indicated what great fear Jesus was in, that what was in store for him. He undoubtedly knew what was in store for him. So Jesus actually experienced a rare medical condition that just exemplified the type of fearfulness he was experiencing at that time. To some degree, we have all felt some type of fear. We may be afraid to try something new. This often occurs when we are not satisfied with a job or relationship, but are fearful in stepping out in faith and letting God provide our good. It also can be fear of maybe developing a new career. With Donna here, I can actually say, a lot of times there are people want to go back to school, but they're afraid to go back to school for whatever reason. This is, again, normal feelings. Jesus had fear too. And if Jesus had fear, then why should we not also have fear at times? These are very human emotions. So we've been spending a lot of time showing how Jesus shared a lot of the common qualities that each of us in this room does. But let's talk about the other part of Jesus. And let's also talk about the other part of us. And that other part of us is the Christ. And up to this point, as I said, we've been talking about those human qualities. Some people might even call them human frailties. But Jesus was also the Christ. The Christ Spirit lived within him as it does in every one of us. There is nothing unique about the Christ only existing within Jesus. Within each of us is that same Christ Spirit. We too are the Christ. This holiday season, we are not only celebrating the birth of the Christ in Jesus, but the manifestation of the Christ within us. It is good to be reminded what the Christ within us is. Christ within us is our higher self. There is a side of each and every one of us that can accomplish anything. Sometimes the challenge is remembering that. It is the God side that lives within each and every spirit. Should that be surprising? Most of us probably resemble our parents, or at least one of our parents. So why shouldn't we also have some of those qualities of God as well? For although each of us on this plane has a fleshly body, at our core, we are spirit. This higher self is fueled by pure love and acceptance of others. It is also eternal. And as you've heard me say many times, quoting Albert Einstein, that Einstein indicates that there's a common exchange between that which is material and that which is energy. That our spirit is energy. Energy never can be destroyed. So even when one of us passes off the earthly scene, we still exist in some form. Jesus demonstrated the Christ in his life. When mocked, beaten, and crucified, Jesus forgave those that tortured and mistreated him. We have seen the Christ manifested under some of the most horrific circumstances. And not only Jesus was the one that show these qualities. During the Holocaust and times of war, we have seen incredible acts of forgiveness extended to perpetrators of violence and human indignity. And it is those types of acts that really inspire us. The Christ expresses love and acceptance for all, regardless of what background we may come from or our socioeconomic status. As the Christ, Jesus made no distinction between race, ethnicity, or social status. Instead, he saw the wholeness of all and the perfection of the Christ Spirit that is within each and every one of us. This holiday season, let us remember as we celebrate the Christ in Jesus that the same Christ is also within us. Jesus the man experienced humanness as much as any of us in this room. During this Christmas season, we celebrate not only the Christ in Jesus, but the Christ within every one of us. Namaste. Chairs, if you so desire, your feet firmly on the floor in front of you. You also may want to take a deep, cleansing breath, exhaling away any of the concerns that you may be feeling at this moment. If you have not done so already and you so desire, you may want to gently close your eyes. My life reflects the power of God within me. We are human in form, divine in expression, and limitless in potential. If I ever think I am unworthy or not good enough, I replace those thoughts with the truth of my innate perfection. I am a whole and unique expression of God. As I affirm this truth, I am filled with renewed strength and energy. I claim my divine nature, knowing that because I am made in the image and likeness of God, I am inherently good and worthy. My actions reflect a quiet confidence in the presence of God in me. I am a spiritual being having a human experience. My life is a continual unfoldment of my divine potential. I hand my worries over to the power of God within. I may wish I could guide and control the actions of others, yet trying to do so leads to frustration. My intentions may be good, but the choices and decisions of my loved ones are not mine to make. What I can do instead is let go. Let go and let God. To be in charge and allow God's love to shine through. I let go of fear, anger, sadness, or doubt. I set myself free. As I release my concerns, giving each one over to God. Divine energy surges through me. I am filled with serenity, strength, and encouragement. God is in the midst of every situation, and all is well. Today, one step at a time, I let go and I let God. Now we will enter into a few moments of silence as we contemplate the Christ within each and every one of us.